What's up, guys? This is Coach Leon here, and this is our supplemental exercise series. Today we're talking about accommodating resistance. We're going to kind of go through all the different forms of accommodating resistance. Specifically, we're going to talk about the use of chains and bands and kind of when and why you want to use them. So first off, basically, in the case of a squat, a bench press, and a deadlift, as you start from the bottom, you're going to be in a mechanically, you're going to be at a mechanical disadvantage. So if you think about like a bench press or a squat, when you're kind of in the bottom of the lift, your joint's going to be at the most vulnerable position. You're going to kind of be mechanically the weakest. As you get closer to the midline of the body, where you stand up and squat, the moment arms kind of decrease, so the forces kind of on your joints and stuff are going to be more favorable. So if you think about like a squat or a bench press in particular, especially for a raw lifter, most of them are kind of almost, I use the terminology of kind of cruising to the top. So by utilizing bands and chains, kind of teaches the athlete to accelerate through the entire range of motion. The thought process behind like the speed training and the use of bands and chains, it's also going to allow you to kind of get through those sticking points. So you kind of have, let's say you have a sticking point maybe in the middle of the lift, or even toward the bottom or the top of the lift. It's going to allow you to kind of accelerate and kind of push past those sticking points. That's kind of the thought process behind bands and chains and kind of why you want to use them. So again, it's going to accommodate the resistance. So it's going to be the heaviest tension and the heaviest amount of weight at the top, where you're going to be mechanically the strongest and in the best position. So if you can imagine a band, you can see the band here. Right now, there's slack on the band, there's not a lot of tension, and as I raise the band up, we get more and more and more and more tension as it stretches. So mechanically, if I was kind of pushing this, if I'm going to be weak in the bottom, I don't have a lot of tension here. As I get stronger toward the top, the band stretches more and more and more, and I get the most tension where I'm the strongest. So that's why a band or a chain can really make for an efficient exercise, especially when it comes to squatting and benching, and potentially deadlifting. Deadlifting could be a little bit trickier since you're not eccentrically loading, so some people can be weaker off the floor, and you could certainly, there could be certain instances where someone has a weak lockout in a squat or in a bench, but in general, from a mechanical perspective, from a physics perspective, you're going to be stronger toward the top because the moment arms are kind of decreasing. The distance between, so right now if I had a squat bar on my back, the barbell is balanced over my midfoot, and the more I kind of bend over, the further the barbell kind of gets away from my hip, so it's going to get harder and harder as I descend into the hole. So now we're going to go through the different types of resistance for the bands and the chains. So we have a couple different setups here. So this is kind of set up for like a squat right now. So this is some band tension on here with this red band here. If I wanted more tension, I could kind of choke the band. I could do a lot of different things. I could use dumbbells. If I don't have band pegs, that's fine. So if I wanted to kind of double it up as well. Typically for like a bench press, we might double it up like this. We wouldn't do that for a squat because it would be too much. But for a bench press, you can kind of double it like that. Same thing for like a deadlift as well. Deadlift, you can use a deadlift platform, you can do other things. For a deadlift, you can also stand on the band. We have other videos as far as how to set these up, but today we're going to really more focus on like the purpose of them. So in both cases, for the bands and the chains, the chains can be a little bit more visual, but as this person descends into the hole, right now we have 40 pounds of chain. Well, this is 20 pounds, it would be 40 per side, 40 total, 20 per side, so this is 20 pounds of chain. As I descend to the bottom, links gather onto the floor. Weight gets lighter as you get weaker. Weight gets heavier as you get stronger. Now links are raising off the ground, so you're going to have an additional weight at the lockout. So this would be kind of a good setup for somebody that's squatting at this height. Now the difference is between the chains and the bands. The bands are also actively pulling the barbell down, so we get what's called an overspeed eccentric. So it's a little bit more advanced than the chains. So I would recommend starting out with the chains if you're looking to use accommodating resistance, and you can progress into band tension later on. The chains also are a little bit more free, so you can kind of have whereas the band's going to kind of fix you on a specific track. So it's again more advanced, but this is going to pull you down. It's going to pull you down, as you can see, whereas the chains is going to kind of fall more naturally. So those are some differences between bands and chains. Even though they do the same thing. So I would start off using chains and then use bands. And then we'll kind of talk about like when you would want to use the differences. These are easy loaders you can get from EliteFTS.com. I find these are excellent because you don't have to get like a feeder chain. So if you want to start to use chains in your training, I recommend picking up a set of these. You can also, these are good for benching as well. Now if I want to use chains for the purpose of stability, I could also set things up like this, but that's not what we're really talking about today. But this would be a good height for bench. And for the deadlift, you're just going to put the chains around on the barbell, okay? So this would be a good height. So these are good for bench and deadlift. These are good for squatting and benching, okay? Cool, so that's kind of, in a nutshell, like kind of how you set them up and why you want to use them. And another purpose, you can also have bands from the top, which is the only difference now, instead of it's actually helping you. So it's the same idea, it's still accommodating resistance. The only difference is that the bands are now helping, and you're going to get this feel of the straight weight on the bar at the top. So same kind of idea, but they would be kind of used for different purposes. So when would you want to use chains from the chains, or when you'd want to use bands? So let's talk about that. So the most common use of these would be for dynamic effort training. So if you're trying to develop speed and explosive power, it's going to help your acceleration. The other thing that you can do is I like to utilize chains a lot for overload. So chains are going to, since they unload you in the most vulnerable position in the bottom, they can be a great tool for like a peaking phase because it's going to allow you to feel heavier weight at the top, so you might be able to feel, it might be like your third attempt or even more at the top, but it's going to be closer maybe to your opener or even less in the bottom. So it's going to allow you to kind of get your nervous system ready for those heavier weights. So number one, it can be used for a dynamic day to improve acceleration and explosive power. Number two, it could be used during a peaking phase to help kind of overload the top, so you can get your nervous system ready to handle those heavier weights. So you're back. So when you're unracking, let's say your goal is to squat 500 pounds of the meet, you may be able to squat 400 with 80 pounds of chain, and that's going to allow your body to adapt to that. So you don't necessarily have to squat 500 in the gym, but at least you felt that weight on your back in training, just as using that as an example. Bands, you could also do a similar thing, but it's a little bit harder to figure out the exact tension and stuff. So I like chains, especially for more beginners and intermediates, because you could have a little bit more of an idea of the actual weight on the bar and the total system of weight at the top. You could certainly use a weight scale, some different scales, a luggage scale to figure out band tension, but it gets a little crazy. I would just recommend you set up the chains and the bands the same way every time, and if your records are improving on those lifts, then you're getting stronger. So bands, for that reason, I would err on the side of being a little bit more cautious, just because it can be kind of hard to figure out if someone's taller, if someone's shorter, if someone squats wide, someone squats narrow. The tension is going to be different for everybody. So when we have some different guides, maybe we'll put some guides in the description of like what band tension and chains we recommend based on your strength level, as well. We'll put that in the description below. So that's kind of for bands. I would recommend a little bit more of moderate training, not as much overload training, and more focus on the speed work when utilizing bands from the bottom. For reverse bands, though, I really like reverse bands for overload training. We've used this. This is a very common practice in our peaking programs, and we've used it with a lot of great success. So typically we'll do like around a third attempt with certain band tensions, and sometimes we might do a reverse band 3 rep max. And we found with certain band tensions, with certain qualification levels and certain ability levels, typically what someone might be able to do with a certain band tension for 3 reps, it almost equates to what they could do with a 1 rep max without the band help. So we kind of have these different kind of formulas and kind of standards that we can kind of project. This helps project 3 rep maxes. This helps project 1 rep maxes for us, what we might do for third attempts at a meet. So we call the reverse bands also called a future method, because it allows you to kind of do a weight and kind of handle that weight for what you might do in the future. Using myself as an example, for when I was squatting 700 pounds raw, I remember like the most I did in training was I think like maybe 685 with the reverse mini band, and I was able to stand up with 700 pounds at my contest. It was red lighted for depth, but in my opinion, it was a really solid squat. And I think I only did maybe 635 or 645 straight weight was the heaviest I've gone. I went that cycle. So it can be utilized as an overload tool and allow you to help peak for a competition. So that's an instance where reverse bands can be very valuable. What else? So I think that kind of covers all the accommodating resistance methods. To recap, it can be used for speed work, it could be used for overload training. They could also be used to, if you're maybe dealing with some sort of injury where you're maybe limited in the bottom. Again, we're not doctors or anything like that, but if you're trying to unload the bottom, it's going to allow you to kind of reduce a little bit more fatigue while still stimulating your nervous system. So those are kind of the benefits of bands and chains and when you want to use them specifically for the squat, the bench press, and the deadlift. We'll also include some links in the description for how to set these up. We have different videos on our YouTube channel for that, but this was more of kind of why you want to use them in your training. Again, as you get more closer to your meet, you're probably going to do more straight weight variations, and then, like I said, for speed work and things like that. So for most of the time, when you're using accommodating resistance, since it's more for explosive work or overload training, you're going to probably stick to the 1 to 3 rep range. Unless you were doing this as a secondary barbell lift where you're trying to kind of really build up a sticking point. If you're an equipped lifter, sometimes I'll do like Paula squats with chains or feet up benching with chains. And I might use these for sets of 5, but in general, for most lifters and for the raw lifter, it's going to be in the 1 to 3 rep range for multiple sets. And again, unless you're using it as a supplemental exercise, you might be doing this for 5 to 8, but in general, the 1 to 3 rep range. So that's kind of how you use accommodating resistance in your training. That's how you use bands and chains. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys enjoyed the video, please subscribe. Please give it a thumbs up. And thank you so much. Until next time, stay strong, and we'll see you soon.